In this episode, we're talking about how to interview a guest for your podcast. Interviewing experts on your podcast helps you leverage both their expertise and their audiences. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about all the different ways that you can get someone to be interviewed on your podcast. I'm going to show you the simple trick to make experts say yes. I'll show you where to shine the spotlight and how to stand out from all the others. For all this and more, stay tuned. When you're first reaching out to guests to be on your podcast, the very first thing that you're going to do is write a list of all the people that you want on your podcast. Sometimes you can even divide this list into different groups, meaning the ones you have access to who are within one single text message of saying yes. The next level out would be those that maybe you need to work on a little bit, and the next level out would be those who are your absolute dream celebrity guests, right? So you have your different tiers. Now, what you have to do in order to be able to actually get guests on all of those tiers to show up to your show to be interviewed is to understand the level of value that they present to your audience, but also that you present to them as well. So this is what we call our value proposition. So we have to understand how much value they can bring to our audience, and we want to make that explicitly clear in our ask when we're contacting these people to be on our show. We want to point out what it is they do, what it is they talk about that will provide value to your audience. And on the flip side of that, you also want to make explicitly clear the value that you provide for their audience. So maybe it's introducing them to your audience. Maybe there are other opportunities to collaborate that you can work on together as well. That is where you open the door. You lay down all of the opportunities that separate you from working with any other podcast. I've been on more podcasts than I can count, and I'm going to say there are some who do this well and there are some who don't. There are some who run their podcast like a hobby, and there are others who run it like a business. If you present yourself as one who runs your podcast like a business, rather than just a side hustle fun thing to do on a Sunday, you're going to start separating yourself from the rest of the crowd. And this is going to be apparent in the way that you ask people to be on your show. So when you have this business mindset for your podcast, you understand the level of value. You understand the value that the guest provides to your audience as well as what you can provide for that guest. So when you lay that all out, you definitely will stand out against the noise. I want to know if you have ever thought of yourself as a podcast as a business, or do you think of yourself as your side hustle fun project to do on a Sunday? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. So now you actually have that awesome guest on your show. You're sitting there in your Zoom room, or you're sitting there in person and you're recording your episode. Now there's one thing you could do to really screw up this opportunity, and that is to talk too much. Allow your guests the opportunity to talk about what it is they do. Maybe you're bringing them on to talk about a very specific topic, but you also want to open up the space so that they can talk about what it is they do, what makes them famous, what makes them popular, what makes them tick, what makes them excited. You want to give space for them to show that, to share that with your audience. When I write down my outlines for all of my podcast episodes, and anytime I interview someone, I always make sure to have really great questions, but also have time in that is called time to shine. And that is the space in my interview time that I've blocked out to allow our guests to talk about what it is they do. And a lot of guests are thrown off guard when you tell them that you want them to plug their stuff. You want them to talk about their opt-ins, and you want them to talk about how to get into their world. A lot of people are thrown off by that because our hobbyist podcasters tend to forget that. So we want to make sure that we're shining that spotlight on our guest, on their expertise, and showing that personality, because they're going to serve even more value to your people. We just hit a really cool milestone here on the Visibility Hacking channel, and I want you guys to be part of the celebration. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button, join us here on the channel. We got new videos for you Monday to Friday, everything you need to know about increasing your influence, your authority, and ultimately your income online. I have to admit, the first year or so of my podcast, let's be honest, 2 years of my podcast, I completely forgot the follow-up loop. I totally had it in my head that once I was done interviewing my guest and gathered all of their headshots and whatnot for our graphics, then our relationship was done. I just needed to edit the episode, post some graphics, and then we'd be an overnight success again, right? That's not the case. You have to remember to play the follow-up game. And there's 3 different areas that you need to focus on when you're focusing on your follow-up. The first step is to actually touch base with them, to actually connect with your guest after the episode is done. So I do this in a couple ways. First, the day I finish the episode with them, the day we finish recording it, either in person or over Zoom or over the internet, I always make sure that I send them a message and follow up. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I had an absolute blast. Thank you for sharing X, Y, and Z. My audience will really get a kick out of it. In this follow-up email, if there's any other loose ends of information that you need from them, this is where you can ask them. Keep that conversation going. Also, in your follow-ups, you want to let them know when the episode is going to air. I've also built in that I love to let them know about all the social graphics we have so that they can share them with their audience. I even started writing out email swipe files so they can send them out to their email lists. And this is also helping generate more viewers onto the show as well. You're helping widen that audience, and you're getting your podcast brand name out there in front of more people, helping to establish that brand authority. So the second thing you have to do, I've already kind of mentioned it, is promotional materials. You have to create the promotional materials to promote your own podcast, but why not share them with your guest? It's really exciting when you get a really amped up, really excited guest, because they end up sharing those promotional materials, sometimes even more than you share your own graphics. And that's a really powerful thing. About 2 years ago, I ran a summit that we turned into a short form podcast series. And with this podcast, some of these guests that I had were brilliant at social media stuff. So I sent them a couple little graphics, and they were able to repurpose what I sent them and create like 10, even 20 pieces of content off of it, all tagged back to my social media handles, all tagged back to the podcast itself. And that was a huge, huge boost to our audience. So taking that time out of your production schedule to create those graphics and to sit down for less than 5 friggin' minutes and send those off to your guests. Bonus tip here, guys, is that if you write those swipe emails once, you can repurpose them. I didn't think this was true. So the first 10 of them I would write by hand, each one being very, very different. And then I realized there are similarities. There's always a greeting. You always want to tell them about why this episode's exciting, highlight your guest. You want to talk about your show, where they can find it, and then what you want your call to action to be. To listen to the episode, to drop us a line, whatever it is, visit the website. So once you figure out what that format is for your show, you can create an email template, and you can create social media templates that you can just repurpose over and over and over again, cutting down tons of time from your schedule, and becomes a really easy to hand off task to a virtual assistant. Pretty cool. The final part of the follow-up sequence is letting your guests know about next steps. Let them know when the episode airs, but better yet, invite them on for yet another episode. If this whole process has worked really well up to this point, they've been excitedly telling their audience about your episode, they've been excitedly giving you value on your show, all of that stuff. You want to do those next steps with them. You want to re-enroll them in the interview process for another episode. Or you can level up and work on that first joint venture possibly, or that next collaborative project. I also have found it really cool to interview my guests afterwards as like a secondary interview, or you just send them a couple questions and get them to send you a video response asking about their experience on the show. That way you can start to collect testimonials from your guests that you can then put on. Some of our clients, we've built out podcast funnels for them that include these spaces, these auto forms and applications for people to apply to be on your show in the first place. And those pages are covered with these beautiful testimonials from previous guests. It's pretty cool. It's a great way to leverage those big name guests when you're able to work this process really well. Pretty simple, guys. I love it. So it's been a blast sharing all of these podcast strategies with you guys, and I want to share so much more. So why don't you guys head over to visibilityhacking.com, click the button in the top corner that says Become an Official Visibility Hacker, and you too can join us in the visibility hacking community. We do challenges every week. We got a great community of people in there, and all we talk about is leveling up your business visibility online, whether it's podcasts, whether it's live streaming, whether it's social graphics, whether or not it's connecting to your next joint venture partner. We will help you level up your visibility. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you check out these videos because they're fantastic and they're going to help you level up your authority, your influence, and your income online. I will see you in our next one, my friends. Until then, remember, I love you. Be excellent to each other.